John, regarding the poll that we released today about reform issues in Illinois, were there any surprises in the numbers and the results that we got back?
I think the size of the majorities that endorse almost all of the so-called reform package items, the recall proposition is getting above 80%, open primary above 75%. That's a lot of people, overwhelming majorities of people endorsing various proposals. Those are the two most important and most widely supported, but virtually all of the other proposals.
Do you feel like the people that responded to the polls are informed on issues such as recall? I mean, we've had a lot of media coverage on the election between Alexi Giannoulias and Mark Kirk and Pat Quinn and Bill Brady, but there hasn't really been that much about recall. Is that playing an effect in this?
I think people understand recall. I think they know enough about it, particularly given that the question is phrased in such a way that they would understand what we're talking about. I think there probably the scandals involving George Ryan and then Rod Blagojevich are the most important background material there. And I think the same with open primaries. That's been around a long time and people understand it.
Now, Governor Ryan and Blagojevich are still in the news at this point.
Right.
But as that starts to change, do you see reform still coming up in the state legislature?
Well, I think reform of various sorts is going to be on the agenda from now on. Campaign finance, for example. All kinds of questions about term limits for legislative leaders. These proposals will be around. Whether they pass is a more difficult matter. Probably not in some of these cases.
Right, and as the Blagojevich card, for example, starts to fade, doesn't that kind of take some of the pressure off the legislature to enact, like you said, legislative term limits or campaign finance reforms?
It could, but there are going to be a number of groups out there agitating for this to be continued and for this to be on the agenda. It's going to take a while for the memory of Rod Blagojevich to fade.
You mentioned those groups. What advice would you give them to keep these issues fresh or new?
Well, I think they are on the side of a great majority of the people, and so they can take encouragement from that, keeping it before the people, keeping it in front of the media. People like Cindy Canary's group, for example, they are pretty adept at keeping things on the agenda.
One issue in particular that's close to the Institute is, of course, the redistricting, which a proposal made it out of the Senate, failed in the House by one vote. Do you see that coming back around before long?
It won't come back around in time, that is in time for the 2011-2012 cycle, but it's an item that will come back around.
All right. John, thank you very much.
Okay.